Everyday folk tend to be a little intimidated by lawyers. And that's something that gets lost on you when you're in the industry for a bunch of years. So one thing that we found quite effective is actually lowering the barriers to contact. This will, have a call to action that might be, rather than book a free consultation, it might simply be, got a question? Just ask.
You're listening to the Legal Mastermind Podcast with your hosts Ryan Klein and Chase Williams, the go-to podcast for learning from the experts in the legal community about effective ways to grow and manage your law firm.
Welcome to another episode of Legal Mastermind Podcast. This is your co-host, Ryan Klein. As always, Chase Williams is with me, and we have a special guest today, Mr. Rob Cooper, a friend of ours to Northern Canada, Victoria specifically. And today we're going to be talking about some aspects of web development and what you can be doing to your website to specifically lower the barriers to engagement and some quick wins to help with engagement and conversions. So welcome, Rob.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to speaking on this because we actually speak pretty often ourselves on web development and some aspects of digital marketing, but we definitely love speaking with other experts to go into a little bit more depth into specific aspects of web development. So let's start with a little bit about your background, how you kind of started working with law firms as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, I actually started, of all things, in software marketing online. Totally unrelated, but it's sort of a great background and really got to go to school and learning about sort of attribution. And that's, again, super different from legal, but that's kind of the philosophy that we brought into legal. And we started our agency, PlusROI Online Marketing, in like 2007. And at that time, still did mostly tech and software, but then kind of found a need in fields like legal. Last year, we launched a new division called Jumpstart Web that is basically all about legal advertising and customer acquisition.
Awesome. Well, I'll jump in for the first question. I know one of the biggest things we want to discuss today is ways to lower that barrier to get engagement on your website, whether it's a lead form, a chat box, getting someone to call. So what are some steps that you recommend when you're attempting to do this for a client? What are maybe like the first couple of things you like to look at?
Well, the interesting thing is, so most every firm sort of starts with what they want to happen. So they want to book a free consultation. This happens probably 7 times out of 10. We come and we see somebody has a sort of site set up where they're encouraging somebody to sign up for a free consultation. But where that's a real challenge is that, especially in non-corporate law, everyday folk tend to be a little intimidated by lawyers. And that's something that gets lost on you when you're in the industry for a bunch of years. So one thing that we found can be quite effective is actually lowering the barriers to contact. So for instance, one thing is sometimes we'll, have a call to action that might be, rather than book a free consultation, it might simply be, got a question? Just ask. And for some areas, that does dramatically better in terms of getting that first contact from a potential client. Other things include, again, for folks who are intimidating, visiting the site, it's typically unlikely that they're going to book an appointment on their first visit. So really the question is, how do you differentiate yourself from the other 3 or 4 firms that they're looking at online? How do you earn their trust? And a big thing, can be simply to have some sections that answer those questions that they might likely have. Think about, whatever your field is, think about what a potential client is likely worried about. Think about the questions that most of them ask when they get in touch, and make absolutely sure that information's on the site. And then, the potential client's going to feel like you're talking directly to them and that you know what you're doing.
From an analytics standpoint, we look at behavior flow, and over the years, we see how people definitely interact differently with websites, especially when they enter through the homepage. So for example, we used to see in the beginning, maybe more, they hit the index, then they go to contact. And then more in recent years, we see people hitting the homepage and then they go to like About Us and learn more about the lawyers. So it's kind of interesting how it evolves and to see how people like kind of validate the lawyer and the law firm by going to maybe like an About, going to like testimonials, reviews, and then go into maybe case results and other things like that. Do you see any other pages? Do you see additional information or additional places visitors will navigate to for them to make that connection that you're talking about?
I'd say FAQs, except that now kind of where we're trying to move is to actually incorporating those questions right into the natural flow, sort of on the pages that you mentioned, and that's really interesting to hear your experience there too. That's really great. And the one other thing I'd add that kind of popped into my mind when you're talking about people sort of reading the testimonials and reading the about is just the rise of reviews and the critical importance of reviews. And I can't say that I know exactly the best way to put them on a site, just because most people, trust them much more out in the wild. But I think there's definitely some opportunities for firms to really use the reviews as well.
What are some other call to actions? You said 70% are to get a free consultation. What's the other 30%? Just a general contact form?
Yeah, people get in touch. And something that's interesting is a lot of clients and the firms that build their website kind of think in terms, again, of just sort of walking through and having checklist items of, okay, well, let's have the get in touch. Let's have there's lots of firms that have subscribe to our newsletter, and which is typically ridiculous when you have somebody who's got a one-off sort of need that they have. It's really unlikely that they're going to sign up for a newsletter. But sure. So the one thing I'd sort of throw in there as well is just simply to explain to somebody why they would sign up for something. So it might be contact us, those simple steps, so that people, remembering that they're probably, a lot of them are probably a little bit intimidated, making it clear exactly what's going to happen. Book a free consultation or get in touch, sort of wondering if they're going to be sort of chased down by somebody trying to sell them. People are getting more and more skeptical about things. So, definitely making it clear exactly what is going to happen once they take that step, whatever the call to action is pretty critical.
And this kind of piggybacks off of what we spoke about before we started recording, was with making your site more inviting and removing that intimidation factor some people might have when searching for a lawyer or actually speaking to a lawyer for the first time if they've never had to in the past.
Yeah, more to that point as well, and just thinking in terms of being engaging and inviting. It's amazing how many sites you'll see where there might be a page about a certain part of the practice, or even one of the About Us pages about one of the individual lawyers, and sort of read through the entire page. There's a bunch of information, get to the bottom, and there's nothing. So really, kind of the question that people should ask when putting their site together, or when reviewing their site to improve it, is basically, what would the next logical step be for anybody who's on this page? And it may well be that it's getting in touch or getting more info, but definitely getting people to that point and then making it clear exactly how to take those next steps can be huge. And I think too, where people sort of forget is that a lot of firms, and actually any healthy firm, should get most of their clients from referrals. That's sort of a sign of a strong firm and a good company. And in that case, those site visitors are pretty much going to come to the site. They're basically just making sure that the firm looks like how it was described to them. There's not really any huge conversion challenges there. As long as they can find your phone number or your contact form, that's just fine. But where it gets super critical is when you're doing advertising or search engine optimization and driving new traffic to the site that has no familiarity with your company. And so really, it's kind of important to note that's where this makes all the difference, because they don't have the trust, they don't have the knowledge, they don't know anything about you. So you really have to look at it from that perspective. And it's particularly important just because those are areas where sites and rather the companies themselves invest both lots of money and lots of resources in developing those areas. But then, quite frankly, typically overlook those little steps that really address the needs of a first-time visitor.
Yeah, we completely agree with referrals and reputation. We actually had a guest last year. His name is Mark Homer. He's the founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. And we talked for 30, 40 minutes specifically about protecting referrals, because there's two things people take for granted. I mean, when I say people, law firms, but potentially lawyers managing the websites. And the first one is people assume that if they're referred, word of mouth, that they're just going to go to the website and they're going to contact them immediately. And that's certainly not the case. We found out through a study that 80% of people will do further research on a law firm or a lawyer, even if they get the referral from a close friend or a family member. And the amount of time that they'll spend doing that research is about 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's off the top of my head. That's how many times I've recited that. I wasn't reading that from anything. That just has been drilled into my head. And so I think that so far when we're discussing this, another way we can take this further, especially when people are on the website and having that experience on a website, is what you say about people don't take that first step a lot of times in the first visit. And we also, I think, I take advantage of the fact that for personal injury and criminal defense, when things are kind of urgent, when you need representation a little bit quicker than some other practice areas, we kind of assume that if people are already there, they're just going to submit their information, because we're just using kind of what we've always used: free consultation, free case review, no obligation, within 24 hours, within an hour. But I think that it's important to maybe look a little bit further, put ourselves in people's shoes a little bit more than we're doing and on most websites. And I completely agree on also establishing what the steps look like, what the experience together will look like once you submit the information. And I don't think that we do that a lot on legal websites.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right there. And especially on the visitor-centric focus. I mean, that would be another thing that we see regularly is just websites that sort of speak in legalese and speak from the perspective of the firm. It's tough too. I mean, we see this in all kinds of different industries and areas, but basically the more of an expert that you are in your field, the less likely you are to be using language that's going to make sense to a first-time visitor or somebody who's not an expert. So again, really, looking and understanding the clients, thinking about, for example, the personal injury. It's like, well, what language do people use when they actually get in touch? And it's probably a lot of it is not the same language you use inside the firm. So, what language do they use? What questions do they ask? And then put that first. I mean, the details of the firm are definitely important, but, people are sort of joke sometimes that people are selfish and lazy. And that's not, of course, not necessarily true, but people are thinking about their own needs and about themselves. And they definitely don't want to have to go dig for the information to answer the questions that they have for their own concerns. So definitely, thinking about those common questions, those common challenges that most of your clients have. Do some interviews, chat with friends, just talk to people outside the industry to get a sense of what language people are actually going to use.
This is kind of a question and also maybe or your opinion. So to kind of establish the steps or what people can expect once they submit information, have you ever kind of just laid it out in actual text or a graphic? Because this is something kind of new to me, and I think that it's more important ever to do something where it's like, instead of just a contact form that says get your free consultation, technically when you're saying that, the person doesn't know, like, when is it happening, how does it happen, like what's going to happen next. Like, you just do it, you fill out your information and it goes, and then most people don't know what happens next besides like a prompt that just says, cool, we'll be in touch in 24 hours, right? Is there step one, you fill out your information, step two, you speak with one of our lawyers to go over your case and go over your options, step three, if you feel like we're a good fit to handle your legal issue, you will proceed with our firm. Like,
what? Yeah, no, you know what? That's an awesome idea. I haven't done that, but as soon as you started talking about it, it took me back again to software marketing, where there might be some technical sort of steps involved in a process, and in that area, that's done all the time. You'll see graphics like that on tons of websites. Just the step one, do this. Step two, this is going to happen. Step three. And I think even if you look at processes like shopping carts in e-commerce, you'll see a lot of shopping carts show the steps and show exactly where you're at in the steps so that you're sort of comfortable and know exactly what to expect.
It's funny because we have that on our own website. So it's like, if someone's interested in marketing services, we talk about the 3 steps. I think I think there's a lot of things, a lot of nuances on law firm websites where we get wrapped up on some things, but don't respect other things that we perceive as very simple. It's like, why wouldn't they just fill out their contact information? We'll contact them. But it's like you're saying, it's intimidating. It's an experience that 99% of people haven't gone through. They don't know what to expect. I don't think you have to necessarily call it hand-holding, but it's just reassuring. It's making them feel comfortable and knowing what to expect next.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny too. I think that extends even to the imagery on your website in terms of sort of people being intimidated and just getting that comfort factor is, I think when you have photos of yourself or your team, you always want people to look professional, but the photos you see of people in perfect suits standing in very formal poses in front of big buildings or something, to use the cliche, those don't do a lot to enhance approachability and engagement. Definitely you want to look definitely you want to look professional, but I think looking approachable and human is super important because there is that ultimately it's a relationship. And if you are unapproachable and appear kind of scary and intimidating in your photos, that's certainly not going to help with your situation of making that human connection and building that trust, which absolutely has to happen.
Do you think that there's any imagery or wording that works best for different practice areas? So like PI versus criminal versus family, specifically talking about, I guess, stock imagery versus like cartoonish imagery or original images?
Yes, and yes. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it's interesting. First off, always, if possible, if you can have original images of your team and of your environment, that's way better and just looks more authentic. Obviously, that's not always practical, so there's going to be lots of stock imagery in play, but definitely picking imagery that goes with the firm, goes with the environment, looks a bit more natural. That's a great option. It's funny on that front, being here in close proximity to Seattle and Vancouver, which are larger urban centers than here in Victoria. Go through and the default photo is a stunning picture of downtown on the homepage. And that's great, but I think everybody in the city knows they're in the city. So that's an area where there's, definitely an opportunity to use a more sort of human and inviting photo. And to your question on different types of law, I think definitely anything where there's sort of a confrontational element, so litigation and that sort of thing. Definitely you want to look probably maybe a little tough. Whereas typically if you're doing sort of family mediation or something like that, you definitely want to look warmer and more approachable. And, if it's wills and estates and probate and that sort of stuff, looking tough isn't going to help you. So I think definitely just, again, thinking of the type of representative that somebody's going to be looking for in the field that you practice in, and then providing an image that's going to meet that expectation will help sort of build trust and also that sort of continuity in the process too.
Are you using 2020 to experiment a little bit differently with imagery or text, or pretty much like in creating the narrative for like homepage or important pages on the website? So like, for example, are people just so used to seeing like the scales of justice and the gavels? Are they, for a PI website, are they expecting to see a car accident or someone slip and fall? Are there any examples of maybe even you just being like, we got to switch it up. We have to make it more approachable. We don't want to make it generic. We want to stand out. Is there anything kind of you're doing on your side to change the aesthetic and then change the narrative when it comes to websites?
One area that we've worked on a little bit and are going to continue to develop, which really lends itself nicely to the sort of paid channels, the paid acquisition, like the Google AdWords. It lends itself to that simply because you can test two versions of a page and then determine which one's working better. One area that we have been sort of dabbling in more through 2019 and I think are going to go, let's say, all in on to a certain extent in 2020 is that of using imagery that sort of brings out emotions. And a good example is, for instance, we do some work in sort of cross-border issues and waivers and sort of that sort of thing. And on one landing page using imagery of somebody sort of sitting alone in a waiting room in an airport. And it's kind of that speaks to the fear that somebody has likely had that's driven them to the website as, with my past issues, what if I can't board an aircraft, or what if I can't get through customs or TSA because of something that's happened to them? So, in that case, generally we love going with sort of a top one would be photos of the actual team that people are going to be working with, just because of that human element. But this other area, that's not always possible just because of constraints on availability of photos. But finding some high quality stock imagery that really sort of symbolizes the feelings and emotions that somebody's going through, definitely an area worth dabbling in as well.
We're even attempting to be more story oriented when it comes to websites than in the past.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, to be honest, we don't build a ton of sort of highly detailed legal websites, sort of focus more on driving the traffic and then certainly in helping improve the sites to capitalize on that traffic.
If anybody has any follow-up questions for you, what's the best way to get in contact?
Through email at rob@plusroi.com is perfect. And yeah, happy to answer any questions. And that's a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to the Legal Mastermind podcast. If you're interested in working with Ryan and Chase, please email mastermind@marketmymarket.com. Make sure to join the free mastermind group for growing and managing your firm at lawfirmmastermind.com. Ryan Klein and Chase Williams are the managing partners at Market My Market, one of the top legal marketing companies in the United States.